the 9 p.m. edition of the Urban Debate. Viewers, a comment that was made by Union Minister Piyush Goyal has sent some shockwaves and triggered a big debate within the real estate industry. Now, this is what he has been quoted as saying. Newspaper reports say that Mr. Piyush Goyal said to the real estate players, complete your projects before you sell. Buyers will not buy under construction projects. Tons and tons of builders have taken customers for a ride. And then he went on to say that you don't have an option but to reduce your prices, sell your homes and get your money. Don't expect support from us. Now, no other choice but to sell at a realistic price is something that the industry has latched onto and is very, very concerned about. What does that really mean? Or does that mean that there won't be any more government help coming in? Just like every other sector, the real estate sector has also been keenly watching all the announcements by the central government in times of an economic slowdown, aggravated and worsened because of the COVID pandemic. Almost every industry in our country today is seeking some government help. For the real estate project, real estate industry, there are big challenges. For example, we're given to understand about 15 lakh projects are actually pending across the country. Many real estate companies in the last few years have already declared bankruptcy. Real estate players are starved for funds. They're not able to sell homes. People are not interested in buying homes, not at the current prices in most of the city. Anyways, the consumer demand is completely gone. So you have real estate players who are just sitting with unsold inventory and out of money. Now, what happens then? What does the minister's comment mean? And does that resolve the problem of the real estate industry? Does that mean that you and I could probably get the opportunity of a cheaper house in the coming months? I don't know. Let's ask the experts. Let's say good evening to the panelists who are joining us right now for this conversation. And in fact, representing the real estate industry, I've got Mr. Naveen Raheja, Chairman and Managing Director of the Raheja Developers. I've also got Prashant Solomon, MD for Chintal India and member of Credai NCR Treasurer. Ghulam Zia, Executive Director for Knight Frank, and Mr. Sudesh Verma of the BJP joins us this evening. Let me in fact go to Ghulam Zia first and ask him this. What's your own reading, Mr. Zia, of the comment that's been made and what kind of impact could that have on the sector? Mr. Ghulam Zia, are you able to hear me? Okay, while we fix that line, let me quickly ask Mr. Sudesh Verma if we've gotten the message that's coming in from the government wrong, or this is what it is, that the real estate players need to do a reality check, reduce the prices and sell their inventory. Mr. Verma?
Yeah, that is the best option actually, because the government fund cannot be allowed to go into projects that are unsustainable. And these projects become unsustainable because you have high pricing. There is no buyer. So the one way is to reduce your inventory, sell it at a cost which is cheaper. Maybe there will be some loss or notional loss, but you will be able to pay the bank loans. You will be able to, get over your assets, and then you can start new projects. That is the way to deal with the crisis situation. And the country is, in a difficult time. And of course, our priority is the poor people and the middle class. The government has already given, extension of 1 year for subsidized housing. So this is the best time to use this opportunity. And if you come reduce the prices, then definitely the projects are going to become viable. But maybe real estate sector thinks that the government will, give something more. You see, in November 2019, the government gave 10,000 crore of backup money. And if you add 15,000 crore of the state government, that was to take care of these assets. They could take it. But the investment to the government will go only when the project looks viable. If the project is not viable because you're not ready to, bring down the prices or deal with the market situation, and you still want the project to be completed, there is no point, It goes into creating NPAs. So that should be seen by the real estate developers and should be more pragmatic in their approach.
Okay, let me ask Prashant Solomon if he agrees. Prashant Solomon, what's your response to what the government is telling the industry now?
We feel that the real estate industry is a real backbone to our economy. It provides employment to second number of people, largest number of people after agriculture. And it is not only the developers who are going to suffer if projects are delayed. It is the home buyers. It is also more than 250 other ancillary industries whose existence depends on real estate. And what we are asking for the government is not something that we feel is unreasonable. We're asking for one-time restructuring of loans, of debt, which was also done in 2008 during the financial crisis. And at this moment, that is one of the things. There are other things also that we have asked from them. But what we feel is that it is not about. See, look, we have to look at the whole Indian economy holistically. Real estate is not to be taken in isolation with just as if it's like some stepchild somewhere. It's not like that. We are providing employment to many people. Housing is part of the Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi's vision, housing for all by 2022. So how do we achieve that when we are going through this terrible crisis right now because of COVID? Before that also, real estate was going through a very tough time. We are asking for more liquidity. That will be, when more liquidity comes into the market, that will stimulate growth, that will stimulate construction, that will give people the houses that they deserve. Do you know how much money is lost into our economy just because of lost labor? Projects which are delayed, the 1600 projects you talked about, is 4.5 lakh housing units. If you calculate the labor rates that have been lost because of no work, that figure itself comes to 36,500 crores, which is money that is the whole country is losing that. So we are appealing to the government that we are a very important industry of the country, and we are looking to try and resolve the problem. You see, so this is what I feel as it is when it comes to
Okay.
about talking the rates. Let me just 1 second. The rates in at least NCR area are already at 2013 levels. We are hardly making any profit. The rate of steel and cement going up. What about that? Why? What about the banks? What about NBFCs? Are they willing to reduce interest rate for our loans? Why can't other industries also share in the pain? We're all in it together.
Yeah, but they're all in trouble as well. So I don't think anybody wants to share any another industry's pain. But I understand the sentiment. I understand where you're coming from, Mr. Naveen Raheja. Good evening to you, Mr. Raheja. Following the central government's comment, can home buyers expect cheaper homes now? Will you have to cut prices?
Let me tell you one thing. As far as I know, across the country, last 7 years, 8 years rather, almost all the developers are leveraged. They have taken loans either from banks, then later on those bad loans were taken over by NBFCs. So almost all the inventories are mortgaged already. That is number one. Number two, now when the inventory is mortgaged, it is always mortgaged on a margin of say 1.5x to 2x. Now, whatever at that time the prices were much better. So the mortgage security and the margins were much higher. Today, it is very easy to say, please sell at the lower price. Okay, sell at the lower price. Will my lender give me NOC? And if there's any lender who is willing to give NOC to reduce his security cover? No, not even a single, because the RBI guidelines or even the banking, its own internal guidelines do not permit to encash the inventory or it give a NOC without taking the pro rata reduction. So it is not possible. It is theoretically anybody may be saying anything. Reduce the price. If I have say 10 apartments mortgaged to the bank and I've taken 10 crores loan, And those apartments value used to be, at that time when I took the loan, used to be 20 crores. That used to be 2 crores each. Today, if I go and tell them that I'm able to sell this apartment of 1 crore, I'm able to get 80 lakhs only against this. Will they, without taking 2 crores, they are not going to give me NOC. So when they don't give me NOC, how do I register the apartment in the name of the customer? So nobody is talking about technical aspects.
Mr. Sudesh
These
Verma,
are technical aspects.
Mr. Sudesh Verma,
At
do you
least,
want to respond to this? You
Yeah,
have two
I'll
big
like to
developers
respond.
sitting
Yes.
here right now,
Yeah, I know, I understand.
representative of the industry,
let any government authority
raising these
officer or
issues.
I
RBI
understand.
officer respond to me.
Tanvi, we are talking about housing for the urban middle class. And what they are talking, probably if you're talking in the range of 2 crore or 1 crore plus,
No,
then
I'm not talking
absolutely
about that.
it
Let
goes
me correct. I'm
beyond the
not
reach
talking
of.
about that. I'm talking about damn anything, even 20 lakh
Okay,
apartment.
kindly listen to me. In NCR, Tanvi, I'm talking about Delhi. About Mumbai, you may be much better aware. Is it possible to get a house, say 2 bedroom, in 25 lakh or 30 lakh? It is not. You see, I had invested in a project and I found that the project was not taking off. So if the project doesn't take off, if the project is not getting completed, I lose the trust on the builder. So naturally, I would not pay. It is in that context that the minister, Mr. Piyush Goyal, has said that you see, you complete the project because then only people will come and invest. But at the same time, if you want banks to restructure, then you must understand that you have to give a viable proposition to the bank. If the bank knows that after restructuring also your project would not sell because the market is not ready to buy at this price, then what is the solution? So somewhere down the line, you have to understand this sentiment also. Where are the buyers?
Okay. May I?
Yes, please, go ahead.
All right, let's take it that way. Today, the project is not viable. Why? Because prices have gone down. The money which was taken on loan at that time has already carried 8 years of cost of money. Try to understand that. 8 years interest has been paid by the developer. There is no margin left. So that
No, no,
means, will you keep the project stuck up and all customers will remain like this only? Do you mean that? Very easy to say. Please complete the project. Please bring down price. Please do that. Please do this. But understand from a practical and ground reality perspective whether it is possible. Has
Can I
anybody
respond to
analyzed?
you?
Okay.
Can I
Very easy to
respond to?
come on TV and give statements and talk all this.
Okay, let me, Naveen let me give a reaction
Well,
to
let
this.
me.
Yeah, can I?
Yes, Mr. Sudesh Verma, please
Yeah,
react to
you
that
see,
and then I will go
yeah,
across to Gulam
yeah,
Zia. I'm
sure.
sure he also
So
wants to add to this conversation.
no, we
Yes, Sudesh
appreciate
Verma
this.
first.
See, we appreciate this. There's no confrontation with what they're saying. We understand the situation they're in. And real estate is the driver of the economy. We all know that. But you see, it should come in the government scheme. That is the whole thing. And if you are taking bank loan, please don't mind. You are taking bank loan. I'm not talking about you, but most of the builders, because the policy would not apply to you alone. It would apply to builders all across the country. So what they did, before the RERA came, they siphoned up the money for different projects. And that is why this project could not get completed because that time the market was good. The investors were coming and most of the financiers have investment and they will not let off these flats go because they cannot understand that they would not get the price for which they invested their money. And that seems to be the situation. But the government is not an ego. If a viable solution comes, the government would be ready to welcome that.
May I?
Let me actually also bring in Gulam Zia into this and ask him this question, Mr. Zia. What do you think can be the solution to this problem? The government now says that we are not going to help you out. Figure out your own problems and your own solutions. Cut your prices, sell your inventory and get the money. Real estate players are saying that's not possible. There's already enough of debt. The prices have already come down. We are back to the 2013 levels. How are we going to do that?
Well, this is, first of all, let me just say that I could not really hear most of the debate because of my technological challenges. I have some problem with my instruments here. But whatever little I understood, I'll try to bring in my perspective. Let me just first of all start with saying this, that the state of real estate industry is something which is I would say almost at the deathbed the industry is. So whatever decisions that need to be taken are to be taken with that perspective in mind. While it's easy to say that the developers should bring the prices down, I agree. As a customer, as a home buyer, I would love that perspective. I would want the prices to come down. I would want a cheaper home for me and everybody else who would love to buy a house. But having said that, we'll also have to be slightly more empathetic, I would say, towards the real estate industry itself. As most of the stakeholders are already talking about, it's so over leveraged. And please understand the implication of any of those actions can, can actually get into a snowball effect for the whole economy. As people have been on the panel, people are talking about, the impact on the banking system can be disastrous. Whatever we are talking about, if we start bringing the prices down to that an extent that is expected, that people are expecting the prices should come down by 30, 40, 50%. Let me tell you, the margins the developers have today are so wafer thin. Anybody who is actually in the business yet, still in the business, many of them have actually gone belly up, have actually gone bankrupt. Those who are still in the business are just managing. They're just about there to ensure that they continue in the business. So in an environment like that, how much of a price correction can happen itself is a big question. So if at all a price correction comes in from wherever it comes, I would obviously welcome it. But then the problem remains: where will a developer pass on that margin to you? Where actually there is hardly any existing right now.
Okay, no, and let me ask you a question that a common man would, and Mr. Zia, maybe you can respond, and then I will go back to the developers and Mr. Sudesh Verma. Look at, just take the example of Mumbai. There are hundreds of flats just lying vacant, ready, people not buying, unsold inventory. I mean, there is a part of Mumbai which actually is beginning to look like a ghost town now because there are so many of those buildings. So what's the solution? If we don't reduce the prices, how are we going to ever sell that inventory?
Well, it has got to be much bigger. A solution has to be thought about. It is not just price correction is only one side of the picture. You have to look at the overall economy, as I said. The impact on the economy is also to be assessed first. So unless we have taken the well-rounded off review, we can't just unilaterally say that. Of course, today they are the fall guys asking developers to bring the prices down is the easiest of the solution that is in front of us. And as you say, there are haunted towns, etc. But how do we handle it? And that's where it has to be slightly larger than what we are only looking at right now. So to start with, there's got to be some review of the Income Tax Act, because there are a lot of those issues. Even if I try to sell the apartment today, the difference between the ready reckoner value and the price that I can sell it at is so huge that there'll be a lot of ramifications for the seller. So I would say the government has to start looking at it from there. Bring in a couple of changes in the Income Tax Act as well. In the last budget, of course, they brought it up. They actually increased the income tax limit by 5% more. But then that is also not sufficient. The way the prices have fallen in last couple of years, we need to relook at the circle rates or ready reckoner values as we talk in different areas, different terms to that. But we have to be aware that the prices have come down. And unless we do also that change in the Income Tax Act, so to ensure that the income tax doesn't chase these sellers or the buyers in future, that's the first step that the government can take. And the biggest of them has to really bring the economy back on track, because the biggest problem is, even if the prices are coming down, what's the guarantee that tomorrow the buyers will make a beeline and start buying these houses? So once again, a buyer is also worried about the employment security. It is worried about the losses in the business, etc. So unless the economy also is coming back on track, to expect that just the price correction will bring all the buyers back in the market and every developer will start selling the houses is also, foolhardy or actually trying to hide behind a couple of these issues and not finding the biggest solution. So we need to really look at the overall situation and work on all aspects. Central government has to look at the income tax changes in the income tax issues. The state governments have to relook at the ready reckoner values, and ultimately overall the economy has to start making sense for a buyer to sign the dotted line and to really pay the money where it is intended to.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Mr. Sudesh Verma, then here is the issue. This is what the industry seems to be saying right now. That what you are saying can't be the solution now, not anymore. It's too late to just do that, especially when they're all in such bad state already.
We understand that, and I told you that a comprehensive solution needs to be, actually evolved. But at the same time, you see, I told you that in November 2019, the government came out with a fund of 10,000 crore, and 15,000 crore was to be given by state funding agencies, so that this could act as a kitty to take care of the real estate sector in the respective states. And for that, viability is very important. You see, restructuring by banks will happen only if the project is viable. And I'm talking of viability, and for that, you see, if we have given a subsidy to say middle class people for buying a house, then whether he is capable to invest that kind of money. And that is where the builder needs to understand the psychology. It's after all market driven. Beyond a point there can't be government intervention, and that is what the government is trying to bring it down to the prestigious builders. We know that they are the people who have done a lot to contribute to the economy. There is no standing on ego or anything, but we should understand that the government's hand is also tight. And of course, the government will try to evolve a solution, but this is also one way that you become competitive and try to get those things through the middle class buyers, whether it is possible or not. Because if husband and wife is working, maybe they can afford a house of 35 lakh or 40 lakhs, but 1 crore may be less for Mumbai, but for Delhi and NCR, it's a huge amount.
Okay, Mr. Prashant, let me come to you. Then what else is the industry expecting from the government? Let's just be honest about it. A series of
We wrote to Prime Minister Sri Narendra on May 24th. A letter went from CREDAI where we made several suggestions, which does not really involve government spending. There things like loan restructuring is not affecting the government. Then things like penal reduction of penal interest from bank, from loans. Then also certain incentives for people to buy. For example, further reduction in the for home loans, the principal aspect as well as interest aspect. Reintroduction of subvention schemes. Subvention scheme is a great way to boost demand. That way, because we understand people are also at the moment maybe insecure about their jobs or whatever it is. Let them buy the house. Let them pay later. At least let the sentiment come back. Maybe we should reduce capital gains tax for property after 1 year. Somebody's holding property, just like in the equity market, let there be no tax on that. Then we're also asking for GST reforms. You see, the input tax credit used to be there earlier, but that has been abolished now for properties that are under construction. We are saying increase the GST, but let us have the input tax credit again. And another thing, affordable housing, the GST rate is 1%. 45 lakhs is the definition of affordable housing. We feel that is a very narrow definition. In a place like Delhi or Mumbai or any of the metros, we feel the rate should be increased to 75 lakhs. Where can we find a house for that price? Now, the question is not about reducing price. You see, when you're building a project, you have to buy land, you have to pay government fees, you have to pay salaries, you have to pay your so many charges are there. Even the right now the cart this thing is happening. The rates of steel and cement is going up. Why isn't somebody telling them to control their prices?
yeah.
So and the fund that
No, you're right there. I mean, affordable housing in cities like Mumbai is a joke. I get that, Mr. Prashant Solomon. And that is a completely different challenge altogether that must be fixed. But let's take it point by point. Let's talk about in the immediate what can be the solution. Mr. Raheja wanted to respond to what Sudesh Verma was saying earlier. Go ahead, please make your point.
See, I think Mr. Sharma was referring to the Swami Fund, 25,000 crores. I will like to ask one question. Do you know how many cases have been approved or sanctioned and where disbursement has taken place? Can somebody answer this? Against a sanction of 25,000 crores, we have projects, more than 1,600 projects. How many projects have got the sanction?
Can I respond to that? Can I respond?
That's a good question. Yes, Mr. Verma, you are the only one who has the response to
Tanvi,
that.
yes. Yeah, I'm ready to respond. You see, I told you, Mr. Raheja, you would understand, we are not here on a fact kind of situation. We are talking of market sentiments, and I said that restructuring or further loan from the banking sector.
Let me now clarify you.
Yeah, please.
Whatever you need to do, you need to understand the holistic picture. India needs to understand the holistic picture at the higher level. Without that, you start creating over conditions in everything. If you have just, against 25,000 crores, if your disbursement is not even 100 crores today, how are you going to help the industry?
Yeah, let me respond. This is what I was saying. Let me respond. You see, I told you that the project has to be viable even after restructuring or a further tranche of loan. And then only the banks will come and say, okay, fine. We see that the project is going to become viable. Let's refinance it. But the whole issue is that you see, okay, I'm talking about Delhi. Let me complete, Naveen ji. Let me complete. You see, I'm talking of Delhi. 75 lakhs is not affordable. It's not affordable at all. You see, why I invest as a person of middle class? I invest because I don't want to pay rent of 25,000 or 30,000 rupees, and I save an asset which can give me a return later. This is the psychology, isn't it? That is why we invest. If you know the 75, come on, it's better to pay 15, 20,000 as rent than to burden yourself with 75 lakh loan. We're just talking about market sector.
Mr. Sudesh Verma, the sense that people will get from this conversation, if I can just, you are basically, sorry, just 1 minute. Sudesh Verma, you're basically saying that the government wants real estate players to cut down the prices to bring it to affordable housing. Otherwise, you're not going to give them any other support that they're seeking. Is that how it's going to work now?
I said that restructuring is subject to they be able to attract market sentiment. So how will they sell? Even if you get additional money to build your project, will you be able to sell? That is the whole issue.
Can I make one point about this?
I don't think they'll be able to sell any which ways. I don't think they are going to be selling any which ways at this point of time. The current state of economy, who's going to be buying? Unfortunately, that is the reality. Even as we speak, this is the news that's coming in. The Reserve Bank of India has put out the details for the consumer sentiment in the month of May, and the consumer confidence has collapsed completely to a historic low, and even the 1 year ahead future expectation has seen an extremely sharp fall, entering the zone of pessimism. The consumer confidence is now completely labeled as pessimistic, even as the Reserve Bank of India now says that they expect the economy to contract by 1.5%. They have already said that they're going to expect negative growth. The number is now being put to it. So this is the situation, gentlemen. This is what we are staring at. And I think a lot more will have to be done than with the government, apart from the government just raising its hands and saying, well, we can't help the real estate industry. Mr. Zia, sorry, but I just want to ask you this one last question. You mentioned it, but let's just go back to it, because you said the industry is on, literally on deathbed already. If the support doesn't come in and the consumer sentiment remains down and out, will we see more companies going bust, more real estate players going bust, and more havoc being created this year?
Well, it is obvious. What you're saying is bound to happen. It is to happen unless you really actually work on it. And I couldn't really relate to it. I think I couldn't hear Mr. Verma talking about it, but he mentioned the Swami Fund. The Swami Fund was actually supposed to be the ventilator for the real estate industry, which is on the deathbed. But that fund itself is passing through lots of problems. The government's intents are not to be questioned. They're very genuinely trying to help. They've done a lot. But then the systematic issues are such that they have to really manage that first. The Swami Fund requires, it is already struggling against such a huge problem of what Mr. Naveen Raheja spoke about, that the moment they are coming in to take over, somebody else who's a lender has to pass on the charge to Swami Bank. That's the biggest hurdle that the Swami is also looking at. So a lot of those hurdles government can sort out. Government can iron out those issues that the fund itself is facing. So the problem that we today have is the government has provided the ventilator. But is the ventilator provided with the energy, with the electricity and the other oxygen support that it needs? That has to be seen, that has to be checked into. Unless we do that, this ventilator itself is not going to work. So they have done a lot, but then they have to really put their house in order also. A lot of things require ironing out. And unless that is done, the industry, as you rightly said, will continue to fall one after the other like a pack of cards, like nine pins. Many of those, the big players also can fall unless the government does more than what they've already done.
Okay, closing comments from Mr. Raheja and Prashant Solomon, and then we wrap this up. Go ahead, please. Mr. Raheja first.
See, two things, government, irrespective of anything, let me tell you, your Indian economy will not be able to revive unless you revive the real estate sector, or at least get the projects completed. Let me tell you that these jo khandar khade hain in lakhs, they need to be completed and money needs to go into circulation in market once again. Unless that happens since last 7 years, why you are suffering, why banking system is suffering, why NBFCs are suffering, because entire money is stuck up here in real estate. You need to complete the projects. It is to be irrespective of anything else. And number one. And number two, you have to create stress fund which is unconditional and which gets projects are somehow completed and delivered to customers. The poor people are waiting since last 8 years now. You need to complete the projects. You cannot be over conditional on every aspect. That is number one. Number two, please revive the sector, give one-time restructuring to developers so that they can move, they can start operation once again. This is an engine of growth. You need to let it work. It is all stalled right now. So you have to give one-time restructuring and try to bring down interest rates, burden on the developers, do away with all excessive interest which have been charged on them by NBFCs, or penalty interest, etc., which have been put on them. They should be plowed back. There should be some control on profitability of NBFCs and ARCs and these pseudo funds. So all the money which has been taken out by them from the real estate industry, they should be there. They should take their money, but they should take a reasonable profit. You can take 4, 5, 6% profit. You can't take 20% profit on developer. You can't suck its blood and let them look at it, that we need to survive the industry. You can't survive the industry. You need excessive profit should be flowed back and restructuring should be done with that. Only then,
okay, I take this point. In fact, this is what I've always said for all the industries, that government bailout should... I've always said this, that the government bailout, government support should come in, but at the cost of the, at the condition that the sector also behaves in a responsible way. That then you don't start minting profits in exorbitant profits, forgetting what the common man wants, forgetting that in this case, for example, affordable housing has to be factored in. Some companies will take a bailout from the government, forget about their own employees, still fire them left, right and center and pocket the government support that's come in. All of this help should come with conditions and with riders depending on which industry it is. But can we really afford right now to look away and not look at the problems of the real estate industry? There is merit to the argument that as part of an overall revival, while we revive the consumer sentiment, put money in the hands of people, and lift the sentiment, lift the spending, we also have to deal with the real estate industry. With it is connected so many other industries, and unless they start functioning properly, a large part of economy will continue to suffer. Viewers, times are really bad. Economy is down in slums, and now even the Reserve Bank of India is telling us that the economy is probably going to contract by 1.5% this year. That is disastrous. Stronger steps, better communication between the industry and the government comprehensive policy announcements and follow-ups. No point in announcing a 20,000 crore bailout fund which then doesn't even get allotted and allocated and used. What's the point? Better follow-ups. This is what is needed right now. This is the need of the hour. Otherwise, we're all in big trouble. Many industrialists have now started speaking up about it. There will be more. The government needs to start listening to what they are saying. Thank you so much to all of the panelists for joining us on this conversation. Welcome back, viewers. There's been a bit of a controversy ever since the pandemic hit us about hydroxychloroquine and if whether that can be used and if it will be effective at all in fighting coronavirus. For the first few months, there were a lot of conversations about whether HCQ can be used. US and President Trump went all the way ahead saying, though, we are going to start storing, start buying and start giving hydroxychloroquine to people, and this is the only way to fight. We are going to do research on it. Across the world, there was a conversation. India, in fact, changed its entire policy about HCQ. How much should we be exporting? Should we be keeping it some for ourselves? Without, of course, anybody having any concrete research and test trial results to say whether or not it helps us with COVID or in beating COVID or in killing the infection and dealing with the virus. The jury is still out on that one. But what has been interesting is that in just about a few weeks, the WHO seems to have changed its stand on this entire controversy. A couple of weeks ago, WHO said we are suspending on all trials when it comes to hydroxychloroquine and its effectiveness on COVID. There is absolutely no relation and it's not going to help. Those trials are suspended. Now they have again recommended that the trials for the antimalarial drug should continue as planned. What's happening? Why this U-turn? Why is this back and forth which is going on? Why has this become suddenly such a big story? Those are the questions that I am seeking answers to. So let's say good evening to the experts who are joining us. Professor N.K. Ganguly, former DG of the ICMR, is with us this evening, and Dr. Ram Vishwakarma, Director for CSIR. Dr. Vishwakarma, let's begin with you. Can you help our viewers understand these back and forth that's happening by the WHO on this drug?
Well, this is primarily because I think a week ago a major paper appeared in a prestigious journal, Lancet. And immediately after that paper appeared, WHO decided to stop the trial based on the data that was presented in that paper. But then people worldwide started questioning the content and the methodology and the recommendation of that paper. And they turned out after several round of discussions with editors, and then yesterday, editor put a editorial concern on that paper. That means the finding of that paper should not be taken as it is presented. Therefore, then WHO took a U-turn and then started the trial again. So it's because of that controversy this decision had to be taken.
Okay, let me see if I can actually also go across to Professor Ganguly. Good evening to you, Professor Ganguly. In fact, ICMR, I believe, in India had actually written to the WHO after they suspended trials. Why do we believe that this is something that should be followed up?
Actually, I don't represent ICMR anymore, and I don't represent any organization.
I know that, yes.
I am a scientist and will give a scientist view. Hydroxychloroquine came with a big promise.
Yes.
Because it prevents the glycosylation of the receptor, so virus doesn't attach. It doesn't cause the phagosome-lysosome fusion. It enhances the pH and also brings down the immunologic inflammation. So it had a great promise. 29 trials have been done on this particular thing. And for some of the trials, like veterans trial, which is a very large trial, and the French trial, they didn't show any benefit with this, but shows very high cardiac toxicity. and the American Association of Cardiologists expressed concern about the cardiac toxicology. So many countries like France, Italy, Sweden, Brazil, etc., have banned the use of this drug in the treatment of the critical cases. So the Lancet paper, which Dr. Vishwakarma said, created a concern because this was HIS data. It was not actually based on protocol. So HIS data was gathered from 961 hospital by a data gatherer, which is known as surgical as a screen, but this data gatherer got into some disrepute. So when the Lancet thing was questioned by many scientists, the answer didn't come very well because the data which the data gatherers have given could not be matched. So what happened that now what Lancet has said that to Harvard, and Harvard University has appointed an independent group to audit this. And Lancet is also doing an independent audit, and they are waiting. They say that the results will come out and then they will take a position. But what happened yesterday was again a landmark thing, that New England Journal Medicine published a paper which showed that in the prophylaxis there was no advantage with hydroxychloroquine, and there was adverse reaction 40% in a group which was given hydroxychloroquine, and 60% in a group in which the hydroxychloroquine was not given. So this was a very good trial, and the results came, but it also has some problems. Every trial has a problem. This particular thing had a problem that in only 3% of them one could do the RT-PCR for confirmation, and the medicines were mailed for the people to take this, and people, volunteers were 40 and 40 plus. They do not have so much cardiac abnormality or other metabolic abnormality where the drug is toxic. So as far as pharmacovigilance data is concerned, all over the world at this given moment, this drug has toxicity, enhances cardiac arrhythmia, and most of the people who are dying and in ICU have an underlying disease. So this is the concern. And after it came out that even in the prophylaxis, it is not showing any good result, and it was a well-planned study, albeit some problems. So at this given moment, we do not have in the world any data. Some initial data showed some advantages of virus load being brought down in the initial stages. But at the moment, we do not have any data that whether it helps in the intensive care patient or in the prophylaxis. So with a lot of cardiotoxic concerns. So we are waiting for the Lancet data being resolved, and when it is resolved, I think there should be some position. Then 60 trials are going on, and the result of those 60 trials will be available. So I propose that none of those 60 trials should be stopped. They are in the advanced stages, and when we get the results of those trials, the position will be much clearer.
Okay. In fact, let me go back to Dr. Vishwakarma as well. Dr. Vishwakarma, the ICMR wrote to the WHO when the trials were suspended, and in fact they said that, well, we disagree with your view on whether or not it will be helpful. What has been tested in many other parts where they have failed has been a different kind of a dosage, and we believe that they actually tried dosage which was 4 times higher than what should be tried out. Do you believe that perhaps there are there is research and there are trials going on where there is hope, and that HCQ could be the solution?
Yeah, so the stance ICMR took was based on the trials they were doing for last 2 months. They were doing 2 or 3 trials, and the result of one trial came at the same time when this controversy arose about the Lancet paper. So ICMR took a stance based on the data they had of actual trial done in India by the ICMR. So I think their recommendation, and that's how they wrote to WHO not to stop trial. I think it was a knee-jerk reaction based on a flawed paper published in Lancet. And I normally scientists don't take these kind of knee-jerk reaction. Every trial has its value, every trial has its flaw. So, like Dr. Ganguly said, that several trials are happening. Last word on this drug has not been spoken. And particularly the Indian context, this drug has been used for last 60 years. So I am personally not concerned about all these cardiotoxicity, all these American journals are publishing. This drug has been one of the safest drug which has been used and saved millions of lives during the endemic of malaria during 60s and 70s in North India. So I think this drug for Indian doctors, this is a very familiar drug. And that's why most of the hospital staff, nurses are using it virtually every day to protect themselves from the virus. Of course, its efficacy, it at certain point of the disease, because this disease has a multiple phases of development. There is an immunosuppressive phase. Before that, there is a inflammatory, pro-inflammatory phase. So I think we have yet to discover out where this drug has some benefit. But the ICMR stance is based on their own data, which they have now published in the form of one paper, and I hope other papers will also come out. And I think this is the current status. But as Dr. Ganguly said, the last word on this drug has not been spoken, and I'm happy that WHO sort of took a U-turn and started those trials. So I think that's a good news, because no decision should be taken or a paper which has a flawed. In fact, today, Guardian newspaper of UK has published a detailed investigation that all that the private company data was coming was fraudulent data. There is no basis of having that much of 96,000 patient data that they're claiming from several hospitals across America. So there are people all over the world are questioning that study. And that is why editor of the journal has put a concern on this paper. That means the finding of this paper should not be taken as of now seriously by the clinician, because this is a matter of life and death for when a clinician start giving a particular medicine. So I think we have to wait for all these trials to be concluded, and then I think we should take a call on whether this drug has some benefit or not.
Okay. Also, Professor Ganguly, many actually are questioning the WHO's back and forth and U-turns which has happened on this, and attributing it to international politics and to political pressures, or pressures from various countries. Do you sometimes, as a scientist, believe that we're losing the sight of what is important because of this fight that's going on between various nations and the politics that's going on, including WHO getting dragged into it?
Actually, every day things are changing. Like I told you that New England Journal Medicine paper came only yesterday, and it's a large paper. And there was an editorial written by a very reputed scientist on that particular paper. And this actually contradicted that whether it is useful for prophylaxis or not. Very elegant paper, but provocative paper. But as Dr. Vishwakumar says, every paper has a flaw. And this paper also had a flaw. But one of the things which I want to say, that SCQ used in malaria is a different dosage. It is a lesser dose and is given for a very small time. The drug which is given for the COVID, it is given for a loading dose and given for 10 days, and to a absolutely different kind of age group. And in malaria, there is a concern that when this drug is used widely, in malaria, the Global Fund came with a rule, and which India accepts now, that in the fever, it will never be given to malaria if there is a diagnostic test is not conducted. So there is a concern, if it is used indiscriminately for prophylaxis or other thing, there will be widespread resistance to chloroquine, which had happened in Africa and which had happened in India also. So this is a very big concern. Dosages are different, age groups are different. Malaria, essentially 80% is a children's disease. So they do not suffer much from the COVID, and the dosages are very, very different. As far as WHO is concerned, firstly, it should not have stopped the trials, because all the trials are in a very advanced stages, and the data will be coming in very soon. So it stopped it. It might have had its own reasons. I do not know because I do not have privy to all the papers. And this Lancet paper had data from the HIS. Right from the beginning, it was certain that the hospital information system data was captured. Many papers are written out of that. It was not around protocol. So that was there. Only problem was this, that the company which was the data gatherer and which gathered data didn't have a good reputation and immediately could not provide the data. That is why an independent auditor is going through all the HIS record, and Lancet has said that this in its concern, and Lancet itself is carrying out another investigation. So we should wait for this. As a scientist, we need to wait this. And we cannot ascribe why WHO took a...
Yes, I have limited understanding, but I would agree, and that would have been my view as well. Why suspend or block anybody from trying it out and continuing with your trials? You can ask questions and you can question its study, its method, its credibility, its authenticity, but shouldn't be the WHO to begin with should not have stopped it at all. Let's wait and watch where it goes, including our own ICMR's trials and research that's going on, and see if this drug can actually be the one that finally helps us in fighting COVID. Thank you so much to both of you experts for joining us on this special conversation and helping us really understand what's going on. Thank you for joining us. Well, viewers, before we wrap up, here is something interesting that happened today. Now, as you know, Rahul Gandhi has been interviewing people from different walks of life, from economists to industrialists. Today, he had Rajiv Bajaj on his show and interviewed him. Now, one interesting bit that actually came from that interview was obviously about industrialists speaking up or not speaking up, and if they don't speak up because there is an environment of fear. Now, while Rahul Gandhi, of course, being from the Congress party, would want to ask these questions to also target the government, it's the answer that was given by Mr. Bajaj that was really interesting, where he said, well, it's not only that, it's sometimes because businesses know they themselves aren't clean, which is why they don't want to speak up, because if they do, and then there is a possibility of a backlash, they know they will be caught for all the wrongs that they have done. So that was a very interesting point that he made, honestly saying that it's not as if all the businessmen are extremely clean either. And of course, the other aspect was him saying that lockdown, the way it's been implemented in India, has been draconian. Other countries have done a far better job. Listen in.
I mean, I don't think anyone imagined that the world would be locked down in this way. I don't even think during the World War, the world was locked down. I think even then things were open. So it's a unique and devastating sort of phenomenon.
But I will say this, that I have friends and family starting from Japan because of our association with Kawasaki, people I know in Singapore, people I know in so many places in Europe, and people in the US, of course, close friends and family in New York, in Michigan, in DC. And when you say the world has never been locked down like this, India has been locked down, what I have referred to as a draconian lockdown. This kind of lockdown I'm not hearing about from anywhere else. All my friends and family living across the world have always been free to step out, to take a walk, to go and buy something they require, to go and visit someone and say hello. So in terms of the social and emotional aspects of this lockdown, they seem to have been in a much better place. I think we have fallen very short of disclosing facts, logic, and the truth. And
well, Mr. Rajiv Bajaj, even his father Rahul Bajaj have been the ones who have always spoken their mind irrespective of who is in power, and that's what he seems to have done today as well. Thank you so much for joining us in this edition of The Urban Debate.